Definitely lots to talk about today. Sportster Show is back with you guys. Welcome. My name is Jim Parsons. I'm here with Norman Quarrinton from the Sportster. We're going to be talking a lot of stuff. We're going to try to jam it all into about 45 minutes. We've got the repercussions of Double or Nothing, which we talked about on the last show, but a lot of news that has fallen since then. And then we have Hell in a Cell and some massive developments that came out of that pay-per-view on Sunday night. So Norman's with us. Norman, how you doing?
I'm good, man. How are you?
Good. I'm good. I witnessed what I believe to be one of the most memorable pay per views on Sunday night, perhaps in years. And I'm going to get your reaction to it and everything that happened on that show, the matches, the big storyline, obviously, with Cody Rhodes. So I really like that pay per view. But we'll get to that. I want to talk about the news coming out of Double or Nothing because people will stick around and talk about Cody Rhodes, I'm sure. But CM Punk's news and the dominoes that are falling because of it is huge for AEW, right? So we talked about Double or Nothing on the last show, and we talked about the matches and how we thought the pay per view went, and then within hours we learned that CM Punk was injured, and then on Rampage on Friday night he announced that he was so injured he was going to have to take some time away and get surgery. So now we have one of the most confusing segments in AEW Rampage history, one of the more complicated promos, which Chris Jericho made even worse when he was on commentary that night. But it's all been sorted out. So I want to get your first reactions to the news: one, that CM Punk is injured, and two, that there will now be a battle royal and an interim AEW champion, where the Dominion show, Forbidden Door, Dynamite are all worked into these equations. So what's your thoughts initially here?
I mean, first of all, it really sucks that that CM Punk has had to, I mean, look, now we've got to be careful what words we use, right? Because I guess technically he hasn't like relinquished the title, right? Because he's still champion, but there's also going to be an interim champion. But yeah, before I get to that, first of all, it sucks that Punk this had to happen because I felt like with Punk on top as champion, as like the number one guy, I really felt like AEW was about to move up a gear, right? We didn't necessarily see that reflected in the ratings per se, but I still felt that there was a lot of energy and excitement there, and that we were about to get for the first time. Well, not for the first time, because I mean, every AEW champ has been a deserving champ and has been like a top guy and has proved that they can sort of carry the company as a top guy, right? Jericho, Moxley, Omega, and Hangman Page. They're all worthy champs and they're all like top guys. But with I don't think it's controversial to say that CM Punk is the biggest star out of all of those. And so, yeah, it was exciting when he won. It felt like we were on the verge of something special, like we were about to get a new summer of Punk, right? And I feel like the fan base was very, very pumped about that. So that sucks. That's so disappointing. I was really, really upset about it. And he's not getting any younger. So I hope he recovers very quickly. And I hope we do get I'd hope we do get at least one more magical CM Punk run before he has to call it quits forever. That sucks. So the aftermath of that also sucks. None of it makes any sense. You don't need to do it. And I know it's like, I get that they want to sort of differentiate themselves to an extent. I know that Tony Khan wants to have this sort of legitimate sort of presentation and more of like a legit combat sports sort of vibe sometimes with the rankings. You see it a lot. But you also need to simplify things sometimes, man. You can't make everything so unnecessarily complicated just for the sake of your own ego, I guess. Like, we don't need all of this convoluted. Basically, you just say CM Punk is unable to defend the championship, therefore he is no longer the champion. We are going to have a tournament to decide who is going to be the new champion. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, I think the way they've gone about it is overly complicated, unnecessarily complicated. It kind of I felt that Punk's injury, as much as it sucked, it was an opportunity for them to experiment and for them to maybe hot shot a younger guy and give him a chance to sort of carry the company over for until Punk's healed, which will hopefully he'll be back by the end of the year, right? But the way they did it just put a dampener on everything and made it so complicated and less enjoyable than it could have been, right? It could have made lemonade out of the lemons, but instead it's just confusing.
Yeah, yeah. I would have found that had they really planned out how they wanted to make this announcement. When I was watching Rampage, I got this feeling like not everybody was in on what was happening here, and maybe Tony Khan was scrambling last minute to go, oh man, what are we going to do? But I don't imagine that Tony Khan probably doesn't know what his plan is going into that CM Punk promo, right? Like I'm thinking in my head, Tony Khan knows he wants to have a battle royal. He wants to have that person face John Moxley, who he's made the top contender, to then go on and face Tanahashi or whomever. I think he's got it laid out, but he didn't tell anybody. And so Chris Jericho, who's not on a headset during Rampage, doesn't have a clue what's going on. So he sees this. He's used to the way things work. The people relinquish a title when they can't defend it. So he says twice on the show, CM Punk is going to relinquish his title. And then, of course, there's a correction. And even Excalibur, when he makes the correction, isn't right. He says, okay, well, there's going to be a Battle Royal next week, and the winner will face John Moxley at Forbidden Door, which is not true. Because what's going to happen is that person's going to face John Moxley that night in the main event of Dynamite. The winner of that match is going to go on to face a match that's happening at Dominion, who will then move on to Forbidden Door. And had they laid it out in exactly those steps, okay, yes, it's still overcomplicated, but we would have been able to follow along. Instead, there was this cluster of information that was being thrown at the fans. Nobody had a clue what was going on. Yes, the tournament would be a much more interesting idea and a really good way to highlight people. The Battle Royale just seems sort of like, here, let's just plop 20 guys in there, and we all kind of probably know who the top 2 or 3 that are likely going to win this thing are. And then we know John Moxley. By the way, they changed the rankings in the middle of making the announcement. So John Moxley was not the top contender for the AEW Championship when they made the announcement that Moxley would be the guy that somebody would face. Then they changed the rankings. So it was just another example of how stupid those rankings are, right? Like, it just appears as though they're like, oh, crap, we need Moxley to be the guy. Let's just plop him to the top. It's not like he doesn't deserve to be there, but the timing of it was just really dumb. So, yeah, I'm with you. It was just very poorly executed. They didn't tell people who needed to know what they needed to know and how to share that with the fans. And then a bunch of statements later and all this other stuff, we have this 3 or 4 step process to get to what is ultimately going to be somebody versus CM Punk at some point down the road. I think they just really like the idea of an interim title, and having Punk hang on to it because they've got so much invested in CM Punk, and to remove the title from around his waist days after he's won it, I think they were against that idea. That's just my personal take, that they probably didn't want to do that just because they put so much time and effort into them. And it's kind of an MMA thing, right? You've got interim titles, and then you have you combine them when that person's back and healthy. So they like the idea of the realism and the real fight that goes into it. That's why they have a ranking system in the first place. So I don't know. You're right. I mean, it's totally confusing.
Yeah, and Tony Khan's done interim stuff before, right? He's done it with the TNT title. He's done it with the Ring of Honor Women's Championship, which was totally unnecessary. So I mean, I get why he wants to do it. And I will say, like, I wasn't a fan of the rankings at first. Like when AEW launched, I thought the rankings was a bit, I don't know, I didn't think it was necessary. They did start to win me over eventually, right? They did start to sort of, they were being consistent with them to an extent, and I thought, and there was, they'd have a couple of loopholes here and there, like, Adam Cole and Orange Cassidy was unsanctioned, so it doesn't affect the rankings, like stuff like that. But they were starting to win me over. But now with them just sort of changing it on the fly, and Tony Khan putting out that big tweet where he's like, Moxley's opponents were better, so he's ranked higher and stuff like that. It's like I think there needs to be some consistency there, but I mean, it's a learning curve, so hopefully they know to be a little bit more organized next time.
Yeah, I certainly get the idea behind why they want to have a ranking system. Tony wants wins and losses to matter. I get that.
Right. Yeah.
But what I don't like are the limitations that come with a ranking system. Like you literally cannot bring in CM Punk to your promotion. You cannot bring in Bryan Danielson. You cannot bring in Adam Cole. You cannot bring in any of these people and give them a world title match right away.
Right.
You just can't, because you can't justify having a guy who's 0-0 or 1-0 or 2-0 fighting for the title. Where in any other promotion, in any other situation, when it calls for it, and that's the match that makes the most sense, AEW can't do it. And that's why I hate the ranking system, because you miss opportunity. Like, we saw this with CM Punk and how long it took to build to get him to this point. We all bashed the fact that they weren't doing what they should be doing with CM Punk, because they were building him up to get him to a certain record so that he could be a contender for the title. Yeah. I think you just missed those windows. Are so important that you
got to catch that energy, right?
Yeah.
And if let's say, for example, if you flipped it, right, so if Kenny Omega went to WWE next month, right? Let's just say by some miracle Kenny Omega ended up at WWE. If he didn't go straight into the title picture, people would be mad as hell.
Yeah.
If he was just if he was picking up wins for 6 months over, nobodies, Happy Corbins and people like that, people would be mad as hell. So, yeah,
Yeah.
you do got to capitalize on that momentum and that excitement of bringing in a big name for sure.
So, what do you think about the news that we don't know how serious it is? Maybe you got an update here that I don't know. But what about Bryan Danielson and the injury apparently that he just suffered? So he was not able to make a meet and greet at A&W because he
Mm.
couldn't fly. I guess he was injured to the point where he couldn't fly. He couldn't get on the
Hmm.
flight. I don't know what that means. Is he not going to be on Wednesday's Dynamite? Like, will he not be part of the Battle Royal? Because to me, he's the guy, right?
Right, absolutely, yeah.
If CM Punk is not the guy, Bryan Danielson to me is, right? Yeah, maybe you can make an argument for Adam Cole, but I think you put Bryan Danielson in that spot, especially if you can have him wrestle Moxley later in the night. I think that'd be unreal, right? But if he's
Yeah.
injured and can't go, what does that mean for this whole battle
Yeah.
royal? Like,
So
who
I
are they
don't know
throwing in
much
there?
about Danielson's status right now, but the fact that his name isn't really being tossed around that much, or that we are seeing Moxley, they are. I feel like a lot of the copy and the verbiage that's coming out of AEW is referencing Moxley quite a lot, and Tanahashi and Goto and people like that. Um, so yeah, I feel like the fact that we haven't heard a lot about that could be. I think Danielson's probably going to be gone for a little while. I don't know. I don't have any inside information on that, but I wouldn't be surprised if we didn't see him for about 6 weeks.
So you're thinking just
Um,
because they're not mentioning him in connection to the title or to the Forbidden Door pay per view, like if he was able to go, they'd be saying his name a lot more. Is that what you're getting at?
yeah, basically, yeah. I just feel, and I
Yeah.
could be wrong there. Maybe they have mentioned him a bunch, and I just didn't take it on board. But I feel like I haven't seen his name thrown around there, but Moxley's name has been thrown around quite a bit. A Blackpool Combat Club sort of, even if you throw Utah in there, I mean, I know he's not, a legitimate title contender right now. But if I feel like if you were to do like some sort of Blackpool Combat Club triple threat match for the vacant title, I feel like that could have a lot of potential, Um, yeah. So yeah, Danielson, in theory, should be the guy, right? If Punk's your champion and he can't defend the title, then and you have Bryan Danielson on your roster, then that's who you go to next, basically.
Yeah.
But yeah, we'll see where they go.
Do you got any other names that you would think should be showcased? Now, let's assume Danielson's okay. So we know
Mm.
Danielson, right? We got to
Hmm.
assume probably Adam Cole and Hangman Page, just because Hangman Page is the previous title holder. Who
Hmm.
else? Does AEW's got a pretty deep roster now? Do you got
Mm-hmm.
one or two more names that you're like these guys should absolutely be in this conversation?
So, I mean, for me personally, like I said earlier, I feel like it would be a good. And this is just me, and I know, and I'm a bit of a maniac and a bit of a sicko when it comes to pro wrestling. I think the opportunity is there to at least experiment with someone, with like maybe just hot shot a young guy and stick it on a young guy and just see how they do. And if it doesn't work, then you can have Moxley or Jericho or Danielson or whoever beat this person. But in my mind, I was thinking Ricky Starks. I know he doesn't wrestle a lot. He has a neck injury. That to me could actually prove to be beneficial in a way. Um, I'm not saying I'm not. I want to be clear. I'm not saying Ricky Starks should 100% be the AEW World Champion, but that's like a thing that I'm envisioning, and I can see myself being totally like happy with that. Yeah. Then you got what Keith Lee. You've got Swerve. You've got you got this. The roster's stacked, and I don't think there's. I think there's room for experimentation, but we'll see what they do. You
If
know.
I'm following your trend and going with maybe an underdog here, the two names that stand out for me are Darby Allin and Orange Cassidy, because
Mm.
those are two very interesting people, both of whom were at one point considered to be maybe the next big faces of AEW. Not
Mhm.
necessarily the biggest in-ring wrestling guys or the
Mhm.
ones that you're like, oh man, these guys are going to put on the best matches, but the ones the fans really embraced. They really
Mm.
like kind of loved the idea of Darby Allin and the idea of Orange Cassidy. And both of these guys have sort of taken a downward trend. Now, Darby Allin's still been in some really good matches, and he's still getting a lot of attention. Orange Cassidy's been lost in the shuffle for me.
Yeah.
He's not done much. He's been kind of with the best friends. He's kind of been with, others and not really done a whole lot. That would be
Mm.
a shocker. Like if you put the
Mhm.
belt around one of those two guys, I think the fans would really get into it. And like you said,
Yeah.
you could have somebody beat them. So it doesn't have to be permanent. It doesn't have to be one of these things where the guy holds on to the title until CM Punk is ready to go because we have no idea when CM Punk will be back. We could be talking
Mm.
a few weeks here. We could be talking a few months. So you need somebody or at least a storyline to build up and fill that window of time. But
Hmm.
Darby Allin to me would have the fans go crazy, and Orange Cassidy would be the choice that I'd be like, man, no one saw that coming. And that
Yeah.
is such an interesting, very different take on this AEW World Title that we've seen so far in the 3 years of the company. That I think, man, could you write some interesting stuff there? And somehow he's the underdog that even though he's wrestling guy keeps hanging on to the belt, like just
Mm.
for whatever reason he's getting the crap kicked out of him, but just keeps winning, right? It'd be a very, very interesting storyline. But I'm with you. If Danielson's good to go, I think he's the natural fit.
Hmm.
But yeah, along your trend here. What about MJF? Do you think the way all this stuff has gone down and they've removed him from the roster, they've we heard today Warner Media has asked and put out an
Mm.
edict that he's not in any of the opening promos
Yeah.
or anything like that anymore. I
Yeah.
have no idea where the work and the shoot line stops here, but
Yeah. Yeah.
would you try to figure out a way to include him in this
I
thing?
think it's bad timing, honestly. I think they have now. Obviously, now I do believe that this whole situation started as a shoot and is now fully a work, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think it's bad timing. I think they're locked into this angle now, and so now they can't. I think MJF probably would have been a top contender at any other time if this had happened, 6 weeks ago. But right now, I don't think they want to interfere with this MJF angle, which is probably for the best. One person I forgot to mention, and now the more I think about it, the more I like this idea, and it makes me think of Mick Foley in 99, late 98, 99 era, is Eddie Kingston.
Yeah.
I could
You mean
see
the
Eddie
butts in the
Kingston.
seats championship win? You mean like the Tony
Yes.
Schiavone that'll put butts in the seats thing?
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
for sure.
Yeah. So I can actually see Eddie Kingston being a very, very worthy. I don't transitional champion isn't fair, and obviously the terminology they're using is interim champion. But I can see him being a guy that can carry that title for 6 months and get pops and have everybody thinking like nobody's going to think that he doesn't deserve it apart from a couple of old people. Yeah, and he would have to the match. It would have to be similar to Foley's WWF Championship run, right? Where his matches
Right.
they're mostly like messy but really, really just enjoyable. Yeah, so I could see that. I could see that working.
Okay, now I have to ask the obvious question. Would you consider Wardlow for this? Because here's a guy who's got the Goldberg esque sort of run. You have this Atlanta showdown, Hulk Hogan, Goldberg. Goldberg wins the title. Everybody's on the Goldberg train. Everybody's on the Wardlow train right now. Is it too early to give him the AEW World Championship? Do you need to do more with him to establish him as
Mm,
big of a star as Goldberg was at that time when he took the title from Hulk Hogan?
mm,
Or do you go, man, we didn't expect this, but this is an opportunity for us to really push all of our chips in on Wardlow. Let's make him
mm.
the world champion. Yes or no, Wardlow being in this conversation?
I think he should be in the conversation, and I definitely think that's an option. I don't think I would necessarily go down that road at this moment. I still think that because technically he just signed for AEW, right? He's only in storyline. He's only just signed.
Yeah,
So
good
I
point.
think that there's some leeway for them. Like if people are going to question why they're not, strapping the rocket to Wardlow right now in terms of the title, they can
I
say,
guess
well, he just
technically isn't
signed,
he like
so.
1-0?
Well, exactly, yeah.
Because he
Although
had
they
one
still
match
show his
after his
record as
contract.
being like it's like 50. I can't remember what he's lost. He's lost a couple of matches, but
Right.
yeah. So but I feel like if they were to do it, I don't think anyone would really complain, and I think he's ready for a dominant Goldberg-esque sort of title run where I mean, I actually think he's good, pretty like really solid in the ring. But I wouldn't want him to be exposed in sort of regular long main events. So yeah, it would have to be a pretty like spear jackhammer 1, 2, 3.
If Wardlow's in the running for this, and if AEW decides that this is something that they want to consider, I almost feel like they would have to have him just destroy everyone. Like he would
Yeah.
have to go in that battle royal, eliminate half or more of the field, move on and face Moxley and destroy Moxley. Like
Yeah.
not even a contest, just to keep that train rolling, right? Just to
Yeah.
go, holy crap, he's a serious contender. Like not only did he just walk through MJF and now he's unstoppable, he just walked through an entire battle royal and just walked through John Moxley. Like
Mm.
that would be very interesting. The only downside, I suppose, of that is one, does it make your other guys look bad? to what do you do for the guys that you might have to face at Forbidden Door? Because Wardlow's not
Yeah.
really in that conversation, right? He's not a New Japan guy. He's not the guy
Yeah.
you associate to having a 5-star match with someone from New Japan. There's no dream match involved
Yeah.
with Wardlow and somebody out of New Japan. So
Hmm.
that would be the downside of doing that, and it certainly
Yeah.
would have an interesting change in direction for the company
Yeah,
if they
and
went
also
that
it'd
way.
be like how do you get it off of him is the thing as well,
Yeah.
because then you kind of book yourself into a corner a little bit when Punk comes back. You would have to like maybe turn him heel and then have it be like have a big baby face moment where they get it off him. But yeah, I mean, look, they've got options. I'm looking forward to see. It's convoluted and complicated right now, but I'm looking forward to seeing what the end result is for sure.
Yeah, Wednesday's Dynamite's going to be a must-watch. That's for sure.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, so let's switch gears a little bit and talk about Double or Nothing, or excuse me, Hell in a Cell. For
Hmm.
me, this might have been the pay-per-view of the year.
Mm.
Not only was the in-ring action fantastic, I mean, maybe one or two matches weren't like home runs, but they were really good. They were triples or in the parks versus home runs. The first match was fantastic. The last match was maybe the most dramatic thing I've seen in forever. What was your immediate reaction to double? I keep saying Double or Nothing. Hell in a Cell as a whole, as a pay
Hmm.
per view, especially considering there was a lot of big names not on this card. Roman Reigns wasn't there. Ronda Rousey wasn't there. Brock Lesnar wasn't there. The Usos weren't on the card. No Randy Orton. No Riddle. Like lots of people not on this show.
Yeah.
What did you make of the pay per view?
Yeah, I thought it was surprisingly good, right? When they came out of the gate with that. Although I will say, like, the show started and then there was like 15 minutes between the show beginning and the bell for the first match, and I think that's maybe a little bit too long. I don't know if AEW's conditioned me to thinking that the bell should ring like 5 seconds after the
They do
show
move.
starts.
AEW moves very quickly from one match to another. Yes, they do.
Yeah. And I love pomp and circumstance and entrances and all that. And all three of those women have, really enjoyable entrances. And I mean, actually, to be fair, I think that entrances are very, very important for women's championship matches because there's a lot of little girls out there who get a lot of joy out of that element. So if it's inspiring the next generation of talent, then I feel like maybe I shouldn't dump on it too much. But yeah, maybe a little, maybe like 10 minutes between the beginning of the show and and the first bell. But yeah, that match was phenomenal. I loved it. I don't know what I wasn't expecting it to be bad, but I definitely wasn't expecting it to be as good as it was because it's a triple threat match. I feel like I don't know. Yeah, it was great. They just nailed it. The chemistry was perfect. No, I feel like they didn't. None of them put a foot wrong. Asuka just looked amazing,
Yeah.
considering she's barely wrestled in 8 months or something. She's just what a pro. Um, Almost I wouldn't say she carried the match, but she was just absolutely incredible. Um, yeah, brilliant. And Bianca just continues to impress and prove that she's worthy of carrying that Raw women's division. What you were saying about them not having a lot of stars on this card, it made it. I was thinking about this earlier. It reminded me of like, um, it kind of reminded me of more like ruthless aggression type pay-per-views where they would have um the brand exclusive pay-per-views. It kind of reminded me of that. Like it felt ostensibly like it was just a Raw pay-per-view.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that opening match was great for sure.
Yeah, that match really demonstrated to me that those three women have so many unique characteristics and abilities, but their chemistry is off the charts. Like
Mm,
that flurry from Asuka where she's backhand fisting and kicking it, backhand fisting, like where she's just punching. It reminds me of like when those guys like Sami Zayn and Nakamura or those guys get into those just punching matches. Like that was really, really cool. Bianca
hmm.
Belair continues to show her athleticism. Becky Lynch continues to show that she might be one of the best characters in WWE. And when we talk about people like Jericho reinventing themselves and stuff like that, Becky Lynch is really good at it. Like she just
Yeah.
very, very talented when it comes to understanding how to keep herself relevant and to go with the flow and work in the vibe of what's happening. I thought it was really cool. Even the finish with Bianca Belair kind of throwing Lynch out of there, which wasn't exactly a babyface move, and then taking the pin on Asuka, I thought was interesting. So I really like that. I thought it was a great way to kick off the show, and I'm with you. Asuka was the standout performer for me. I thought all three were fantastic, but and Ozzy's in here on YouTube says, "Awesome poor pay per view, poor Becky." He said that a lot during the Facebook live
Oh
chat
yeah.
last night too.
Bless.
Poor Becky, he says. So yeah, okay. So that was a fantastic way to open the show. We've got Lashley versus Omos and MVP in a handicap match. I don't know about you. I was a little surprised that Lashley won this one, but I was very surprised at how over he is. Like, if you listen to the pop, like the Chicago fans were hot. They were very good. That audience last night was really into it. But Lashley was really over. Like, they were really cheering him on. And then when he paraded around after he won and he's holding the replica WWE title and fans were into the idea of him being in that scene again.
Yeah.
Were you surprised by the fact that he was able to win here? And then were you a little surprised, like how over he seems to be?
I will say I was surprised. I wasn't surprised last night about how over he was but I do remember being surprised a few months back by how over he was. But I mean, I think he's actually done. I think he's been performing like really well lately, and I think he deserves to be over. And I think the way they had been booking him was working for him a lot and was helping him sort of stay over. They don't have a lot of convincing big dudes that could dethrone Roman Reigns. I think Lashley is up there. You know, you got Lashley, McIntyre. That's it, maybe.
Yeah, I mean Lesnar, obviously, but
yeah, maybe Rollins now, I guess. But yeah, so I thought that the match was fun. Was funner than I thought it was going to be. It wasn't amazing. I thought MVP did pretty well. I liked his little rap promo at the beginning.
Yeah, that's
yeah, it was a lot of fun. Yeah. I think when it was a handicap, when I found out it was going to be a handicap match, then I thought that's when I knew Lashley was going to win. I think. Yeah, but you know, it didn't blow my mind or anything, but it was totally serviceable.
Yeah, I mean the predictable part of that, I suppose, in the handicap match is all you got to do is get MVP by himself, which is kind of what happened, right? Like,
yeah,
because MVP's not winning in that situation. Cedric Alexander comes down, sort of distracts everything. A spear sends Omos out of the ring, and then Lashley's able to put the hurt lock on MVP. So once that happened, that was pretty trivial at that point.
Yeah,
because I'm really happy that he's staying in that conversation, even though they've taken him from babyface to heel. They had babyface and now, you know, whatever. They kind of had some bad angles for him with the Lana stuff, and he's done a very good job carrying that title as a heel for a while. And that he's not lost in the shuffle, that he had his run and it hasn't necessarily removed him from the picture, I think is really, really good.
And he does need to move on now. I do think that this should be the end. This has to be the end of the Omos Bobby Lashley thing. We're still seeing a lot of residual WrestleMania feuds carrying on, which is fine up to a point. But I think, yeah, he needs a new challenge now. And then also we did get the backstage segment a little bit later between Lashley and Alexander, which I'm not sure if that's leading somewhere or some sort of mini Hurt Business reformation or something. I'm not sure, but it was interesting.
I would assume that at most it's probably like a hint that maybe Cedric Alexander is going to try a little bit of a babyface thing here. We don't know exactly what's going on with Shelton Benjamin, if he's injured or away or something, because he hasn't been on TV in a long time. But this sort of seems to hint that maybe Cedric's going to take on a little bit of a baby.
I mean, he should be a babyface. I think I think Cedric Alexander's incredible, and I think he should be pushed a little bit more, for sure.
Yeah, it'll be very interesting to see where they go with this. What about Kevin Owens and Ezekiel? I thought this was a good match, solid match. Both of them put on a pretty good show. Kevin Owens is always great, yelling throughout pretty much the entire match. This is Elias. I was a little surprised by the outcome, only because, not that I thought Ezekiel would win here. It was a good statement win for Kevin Owens, but they didn't really solve anything. There's no storyline advancement here, really. Like, we still don't. Kevin Owens hasn't proved anything. Ezekiel still gets to claim he's Ezekiel and not Elias. They haven't really done anything with this, so I was kind of surprised by that. Like, they just basically had Kevin Owens win in a solid match with no interference. He just beat Ezekiel. So I was a little shocked by that. What did you think?
Yeah, I mean, I actually thought the match was, like you said, it was solid. It was much better than I thought it was going to be. I actually thought Ezekiel was really impressive, and I do think he is like, I think this storyline and this character, it's stupid. I think it's fun, but it's stupid, and I don't know that Elias needed to be repackaged or anything like that. But he's absolutely killing it. Like, with the material that he's being given, he's absolutely like smashing it out of the park. And he got a huge pop when he came out. He got his music. It was, I don't know. I think it's intentional, but there's some like Ultimate Warrior vibes there.
Oh, I was just gonna say, he's like if you took all the best '80s baby faces, crumpled them up, threw them on the table, and tried to piece it back together, you'd have Ultimate Warrior, you'd have a little bit of Hulk Hogan, you'd have the Macho Man coming off the top rope with the
Yes.
elbow. He's got
Mm-hmm.
all of that going on,
Mm-hmm.
which
Mm-hmm.
might be one of the reasons people like him so much because he's
Yeah.
got little traces. You can see it in
Mm-hmm.
each one of these people in his character, even though he's never fully all the way there with any of them. He's got all those little elements, which makes him kind of fun to watch.
Yeah, I think he's fun for sure. Also, this match, for some reason, I thought it was longer than it was. I thought in my head, I thought it was like 15, 20 minutes, and I just looked it up and it was only 8 minutes. So I
Oh
don't know
yeah.
if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but yeah, it felt longer than it was.
What did you make of Judgment Day? No new member, no heel turn, a new
Mm.
look for Judgment Day, going with the purple and the black. They get a decisive win over AJ Styles, Finn Balor, and Liv Morgan. Rhea
Mm-hmm.
Ripley's got a new look, which we've learned was an accident because
Mm-hmm.
apparently the gear that she wanted to use didn't show up. So she
Mm.
had to make do with what she could. I thought it was awesome. It's kind of a mix between what she used to sort of look like in Batman, and now she kind of looks like a purple Joker. So
Mm.
I kind of like the new look. I hope she sticks with it, to be honest.
Yeah.
What did you? I thought this was maybe one of the better, paced matches. Had a little bit of
Mm-hmm.
short, a little bit of slow, a little bit of fast, lots of energy. I thought
Mm.
this was. I thought all six competitors in this match were really good.
Yeah. Yeah. Solid match. I mean, it's a mixed trios match, so um, it's always gonna be difficult to sort of produce. But I think they pulled it off. It was a good length. There's a sometimes I think they can string those out longer than they need to be. Um, Liv Morgan tagging with Balor and AJ Styles is even if they don't win, that's still like really really good for her. That's like a really good rub for her. Judgment Day, I'm not fully sold on right now. I don't know what it is, but something about it isn't clicking with me. I'm looking forward to seeing where it goes and what happens with it, but right now it's just not. It's not giving me anything that I like. There's
Hmm.
something about it that's, and I like all the people involved. I just can't see. Yeah, I'm just not understanding I guess the message that they're trying to
Are
convey.
you? Are you? And a lot of people are. Are you one of those people making comparisons to older groups, whether it's uh, the Acolytes or the Ministry of Darkness or the Brood or now even House of Black? Are you
Mm.
kind of in that? It's a little too close to that for me, or it has
No, I'm
nothing to
not.
do with it.
I mean, maybe I'm not really that. I don't really. I think if you do that in pro wrestling, then you could do that for everything constantly. Do you know what I mean? I feel like there's not to say. I mean, originality, pure 100% originality is like a myth.
Yeah.
But yeah, I do think, and obviously Edge was in the Ministry and the Brood, so I feel like he's entitled to borrow elements of those gimmicks for his new thing, right? So I don't, yeah. So I haven't really been thinking. I'm not, the reason that similarities to other stables isn't the reason that it's not clicking with me. I'm just not. I don't know. I'm just not getting it. I don't know. But maybe that
Yeah.
will change. Maybe they'll win me over at some point.
Yeah, I like it actually. I'm not sure if I'm totally behind the whole anybody can join at any time thing, but there's some positives to that too, right? Like we have no idea who to expect next. Madcap Moss, Happy Corbin. Basically, Moss gets his revenge here.
Hmm.
Little turnabout's fair play, so he gets Corbin wrapped up in a chair, takes the steel steps, smashes it on the chair. Corbin's taken off in a stretcher, put in an ambulance. We'll call it karma, call it whatever you want.
Mm.
Different look for Madcap Moss that we learned last week, and it looks like he's rolling forward. I'm assuming this is probably going to be the end of their feud, and he'll go on to do something else. What did you think of this? I thought it was a decent energy match, no holds barred match, which I'm not sure that it felt totally no holds barred, but there was definitely elements in there of
Yeah.
using foreign objects and other items, no disqualification stuff. I thought it was a good match. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it was solid. I mean, neither of them are like considered, workhorse 5-star wrestlers, are they? So, and I think they did a pretty good job and worked around that. Seems like they are. I mean, I don't know what's going to happen with Happy Corbin now. Maybe he comes back with a different character or something. Madcap, I think. I hope they don't. I don't know. I think he's got something. Whether or not they can utilize him correctly to get that out of him is another story. I hope they don't push him too fast too soon, or we could end up. My fear is that they're just gonna sort of slingshot him to like a big feud, and he's not going to be ready for it, and then he's just going to get dumped. Right? We've seen it happen time and time again. So yeah, but I'm excited to see how his career unfolds from now.
I am going to give Happy Corbin some props here. In the
Mm,
right role, he may be one of the best heels in the business. He was so good with that crowd last night. Like, he was using
Yeah.
the chair, and then he went under the ring like he was going to get the table, and the fans were like, "Yes, tables!" Like, they were cheering, and then he wouldn't give it to them. Like, and
Yeah.
then at one point he's telling the crowd to get back, and he's going to throw Moss in there, but then turns around, and he's like, "You guys don't deserve to have him come the other
Yeah.
way," so he throws him back. He's so good at working that
He is
crowd,
good.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's very,
Absolutely.
very underrated in that
And I've
respect, right?
liked Corbin for a long time. Like I went to an NXT house show in like 2016 or something, and he was doing all that stuff then when he was Baron Corbin, and he was just fans were heckling him, and he was like shutting them down immediately. He'd have like a comeback for everything, and I thought he was great then. And and I actually I don't think he's a bad worker at all. I think he's really solid,
No,
and he has a lot
he's
of
good.
moves that look really really cool. So yeah, but hopefully he can recover from this, pretty quickly. Maybe he'll just
I
go back to
think
being Baron Corbin.
a character like him, in many ways, like the Miz or Rollins or what, he can lose. It doesn't
Yeah.
matter. In fact, he's actually better, like a Sami Zayn when he loses, right? Because he
Yeah.
can come back out and complain and whine and bitch about the losing. So
hmm
I think
hmm
it's just fine that it has that happen. What did you think of Theory's match with Mustafa Ali? Mustafa Ali basically loses, no interference.
Clean.
Theory
Yeah. In his hometown.
Yeah, like fans were into it because WWE really wanted them to be behind them because they're in
hmm
Chicago and they made a very clear note of noting that's where Mustafa Ali was from.
hmm
I don't know where this leaves him though because Theory deservedly wins. He's the guy who you want to be pushing. He's the next star in WWE. He's on the rise. You wouldn't want necessarily him to lose in this situation, but there's no cheating involved here, right? Theory just wins, flat out wins the match. I don't know what happens here to Ali. Is he just moving on to something else at this point, or did he do his job coming back from a bunch of time away? They used him for this one purpose to get Theory over, and they don't necessarily need him again. Where do you expect he'll go here?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say. I mean, we've seen them do this, the hometown hero loses clean thing a bunch of times. Yeah, I mean, I think maybe because he's done them a favor now, maybe he'll get start racking up a few wins and I don't know, maybe they'll put him in a tag team or something. I mean, you got a guy, he's a very, very talented person. I think he's like a worthwhile, like I think he's an asset to that roster, really. So, and I think if they utilize him, they could actually like maximize. I think I'm not saying he's like a big draw or anything, but I think he's a guy who can sell T-shirts, and I think they should sort of be capitalizing on that. For Theory, I'm not sure that he is. Not sure he's got the right kind of heat. I mean, I actually I quite like him, and I used to watch him at Evolve years ago when he was like just breaking out, and it was pretty obvious then that he was going to end up in WWE because he had that look, and he was actually like a really. I always enjoyed his matches, and he would do lots of like crazy stuff. I don't know that he's getting over in the way that they want him to. I think he's got mostly go away heat right now, which you can still work with that. There's still something to be done there, but yeah. So
Yeah,
yeah, I mean, should be interesting.
it will be interesting to see because I don't know if he's got go away heat or not. Like they
Mm,
certainly want to boo him, which is his
yeah.
job, right?
Mm-hmm,
It's
mm-hmm.
kind of like Corbin. We just talked
Mm.
about him. It's the people perceive it as go away heat, but they like booing him,
Yeah,
right?
and we see
People,
go away heat turn into regular heat all the time. So maybe
yeah,
that's happening. Yeah.
yeah. I have a feeling that he is. It's going to take some time, and I think they're going to push this slowly.
Mm,
But I think Theory is a guy to watch here in the next year or two because
mm.
he's got all the tools, right?
And
He
he's like
understands it.
24
Yeah,
or
and
something.
something very interesting pointed out. I can't remember who said it. Maybe it was the Miz, but that Theory has a lot of qualities that John Cena had when John Cena was coming up. In that he pays attention to everything, he learns, he just sucks it all in. He's like a sponge, right? He
hmm
wants the advice. He's eager to work. He wants to be at every show. He wants to be at every like. He just absolutely loves and he's the driven to get better and better and better all the time. And that's rare, right? Like
Yeah.
there are a few people in the industry that are like that. Cena was one of them, and people have made that comparison. He's no John Cena yet, but if he's on that trend and he's tracking in the right direction, who knows what he could do? So it'd be very very interesting. All right, let's get to the main event because that's probably what most people are eager to talk about, hear about, kind of see what the heck is going on here. So to give a little backstory to people that didn't know, there was an announcement about a day before Hell in a Cell that Cody Rhodes was not able to wrestle on Saturday night at a live event. He was supposed to wrestle Seth Rollins. they announced at that show that he was injured and he was replaced by Drew McIntyre. So Drew McIntyre beat Seth Rollins, but Cody Rhodes shows up at the end of that live event and chases Seth Rollins around the ring. So we're kind of like, okay, well, if he's hurt, how hurt is he? Because he showed up and he was doing some stuff. Then we heard some buzz that maybe his injury might affect his match on Sunday, but WWE is still promoting it. Even he put out some social media tweets like, "You guys ready for Sunday?" And then the reports confirmed that he had actually really injured himself. So he tore his pectoral muscle. And we didn't know exactly when. There was some talk that maybe he did it in the brawl with Seth Rollins on Raw and then aggravated it working out. And then WWE announced that, yes, he completely tore it off the bone or tore it off the muscle in a workout session training for the match, but he was going anyway. So we're like, okay, well, how's this going to affect Cody Rhodes in his match with Seth Rollins? We're all thinking, man, what are they going to do here? Are they going to swerve this? Is he going to wrestle? Like, it's going to be really short. What's going to happen? He does his normal intro. You can get the sense that there's somewhat of a bruise under his jacket, but he takes that jacket off, and everyone's like, holy crap, that is huge. Like, Triple H, torn pectoral bruise, reminder, huge, right? This is massive. And so we're like, what is this? He can't possibly wrestle with that. And I was nervously uncomfortable. Now, I've done a little digging, we'll talk about it in a second, into what is actually, what a doctor would say in that situation and why he was allowed to wrestle and why he chose to go ahead. I did some digging on that. But as I'm watching this before I've realized all of this, I'm thinking, man, this is not safe. This is not a good idea. Why is he in there? Man, that must be painful. This can't be a good idea, right? I was nervously awkward, but super fascinated by it. Like, every minute he was going, I'm growing more and more respect for Cody Rhodes and Seth Rollins for being able to put that match together. What did you make of the fact that Cody showed up? When you saw this, what were you thinking as this thing was going down? How much credit do you give these two guys for being able to do what they did? They wrestled 24 minutes and did a lot of stuff. Like, he didn't just phone it in. He came and he showed, and that match on its own, even if he wasn't injured, would have been good. But the fact that he was wrestling through that was incredible. So what did you make of all that?
Yeah, so I thought it was all very, very well done. To earlier, we mentioned this how AEW are sort of not necessarily making lemonade out of the lemons. This was the opposite, right? The reveal, first of all, the reveal of Cody slowly sort of pulling off the jacket. It was so theatrical. It was really, really powerful. It was really well done. It sort of even just the removing of the jacket was like showed what a brilliant performer Cody Rhodes can be. It was, yeah, I mean, the whole thing was just from start to finish was just so perfect and so well executed. In a way that, to be honest, we don't see that often in WWE these days. I also think Cody, the way he's being booked in WWE compared to how he's being booked was being booked in AEW is just night and day. The fan bases are just connecting with him differently, for starters. It really sucks that he's injured and he's going to be out right now because the momentum is off the hook. Like that, the momentum that he would have had would just be crazy, and you can see him being, after this feud with Rollins, if he wasn't injured, it wouldn't have been like crazy for him to be put into a title picture, right? Obviously, there's two titles, but Roman has both of them. I don't know if you see Cody Rhodes as a legitimate contender to Roman Reigns, but I definitely do. Yeah, I don't know. The whole thing was just so well done. 24 minutes. I think he turned what could have been a very miserable, and he's still got a long way to go till he recovers, but this could have been, he basically like turned something bad and made it a little bit better than it should have been, by working a match with this very, I feel like that massive bruise, to not shy away from that and to use it as a prop almost, it's what pro wrestling's all about, and I think he absolutely killed it. And then to give Seth Rollins some credit, he's just incredible. He's been incredible. He's lost four matches in a row, 4 big matches in a row to Cody Rhodes, and then I think he's lost like every match they had at house shows, and they've been wrestling on house shows since WrestleMania. I'm curious to see what happens with Rollins now. How he's going to recover from losing 4 matches in a row. I think he can do it because I think he's just a really good performer. So yeah. Whole thing was
Yeah,
brilliant.
it was. It was absolutely magnificent. Now, I
Hmm.
know there's going to be some people who were looking at this going, Cody never should have been in there. And for those of you that are thinking that, I'll give you a little bit of information. Basically, the torn pec was completely off. So at that point, there's no further damage that can be done to that injury. So that's why he was cleared to go. That's why he wanted to go. If it was partially torn, he probably wouldn't have actually wrestled because he could have damaged it much further. But the fact that it was already completely torn off, he couldn't hurt it anymore. The only risk you run, really, one is the pain because it would have been super painful to wrestle for 24 minutes with a torn pectoral muscle.
Hmm.
Two is that overcompensating on some of your other body parts, whether it's a shoulder, part of your arm, or whatever, to make up for the fact that you cannot basically use your right pec. Um, that's where you could risk injury to something else. So Cody was aware of that. He knew, okay, I have to be careful here on what I'm going to do, but he was basically showing up. He's like, I can't hurt this thing anymore. I know I got to go in for surgery, and he is scheduled to have surgery. He will be out sometime. Keep in mind, we never know with people how long these recoveries are going to take. In some cases, it can take 4 or 5 months. In John Cena's case, he was back one time at, I think it was Survivor Series, like a couple months, or Royal Rumble, a couple months after he was supposed to be out for a long time. So some guys can recover faster than others, and you don't really know. Ozzy was in here and asked if he's going to be at the Money in the Bank pay per view in July. I doubt it. He might make an appearance, but he won't be in the match. He won't be wrestling. It will be longer than a month for him to be able to wrestle again with that kind of an injury. But that's why he wrestled. That's why he said he was going to go, is that he couldn't have injured that anymore. All that said, he put on a heck of a show. And I believe Cody Rhodes is now, if not in the top two, certainly the top three in terms of total, like, faces that WWE is going to rely on moving forward. I think he made himself a legend on Sunday night. He was already good. He was already over. People were pushing him anyway because of his jump from AEW and his name, all that stuff. But man, oh man, did that match put him in a different stratosphere. Like, the amount of respect people showed for him and the wonder and awe and just unbelievable, like, what is going on here, that he was able to do this, even if he was like, this isn't as bad as people think it is, but great, I'll just play it up and we'll totally have some, one of the greatest moments in wrestling history. I think that's what this was. I think this is going to go down as a moment that people will remember. It'll be in top 10 highlights for years. I think
Hmm.
people will look back at this and go, man, oh man, did that turn Cody into a megastar.
Hmm.
And when he comes back, whenever that is, I think he's going to be on Raw tonight to talk about it. But when he comes back and shows up and is able to really go for the first time, the response and the standing ovation, I would expect the amount of cheers and adoration he gets when he comes back is going to be off the charts. So he's the guy. To me,
Yeah.
he's the guy. You ask if he's in that conversation with Roman Reigns. Yes, to me now he's the guy who can beat Roman Reigns. If it isn't The
Yeah.
Rock, it's Cody Rhodes.
Yeah, I
That's how I
totally
see it
agree.
now.
I feel like he's taken like I said, he took that injury and turned it into a way, instead of like allowing the injury to like squash his momentum, he turned it into a way to like create more momentum, and now he's going to come back even stronger. So yeah, great stuff.
Yeah, and the amount of promotion, because I think WWE, I wrote an article today about the backstage feeling from this that we're hearing. They know what they just witnessed on Sunday night. Like, they understand how big a deal this was and how it's being perceived by the audience and how people were shocked and people were like, this is crazy. They know what happened here. They realize what Seth and Cody were able to pull off, and they're going to milk the snot out of it. Like, while he's gone and while he's injured and not on television, he's going to be on television. He's going to be on television a lot. They're going to show these highlights. They're going to talk about this story. Seth Rollins, I think, is going to probably talk about it a lot. When you ask where he goes from here, I'm sure he'll reference it. I think it'll feel like he's not gone as long as he maybe is, but you do want him to have some absence, right? You want people to
Mm-hmm.
miss him a little bit.
Hmm.
But I think it won't feel as long as it might be. If he's out, say, 4 or 5 months, I don't think it's going to feel like that because they're going to be talking about this match and highlighting this for a long time.
Hmm.
So I don't think we're going to feel the, oh man, where's Cody vibes. And talk about terrible timing with CM Punk. I mean, that sucked, right? Cody's
Yeah.
just in that spot where they're going to use him like crazy, and now he can't wrestle for a few months. So
Yeah.
but that was really something. Overall, what would you give the pay per view if you had to rate it out of five? I said on my show last night on Facebook, it was about as close to a five as I've given any pay per view this year.
Mm.
I don't really ever give anything a full five because there's always something. but this was close. Like this was
Yeah.
really, really good. When you consider all the factors, the names that weren't there, the drama at the end, the matches were all good. I mean, there
Yeah.
wasn't one bad match on the entire card.
Yeah.
These guys really showed up. I thought they did
Yeah.
a very, very good job. So I want to give them props and say it's about as close as a 5 as I've given anything this year.
Yeah, I thought it was a good show, a fantastic opener, and then an incredible sort of historic main event. There were, you're right, there weren't any bad matches, but I think some of the matches in the middle I wasn't super interested or invested in. However, it was a short pay-per-view, right? I liked that it was short. It was under 3 hours. I'm pretty sure, which is rare. It feels like these days. But yeah, I'd give it like a 3.8 or maybe a 4, maybe a 4. But yeah, I don't know if I would quite get close to 5 just yet. I would maybe want a couple more um, matches that I was super invested in, I think. But yeah.
Sure, that's fair.
Yeah.
Do we have anything else we got to cover before we wrap her up today? We went almost 50 minutes talking about this. So anything that we really need to address that we haven't?
No, I think we got all the bases covered, man, for now. And then if anything happen, I'm sure there'll be some we'll need to do some emergency podding at some point. But yeah.
Yeah, it always seems like as soon as we feel like we're gonna have a few days, something comes up, right? CM Punk's injury, Cody Rhodes, this sort of thing. But yeah, we wanted to address the CM Punk and Cody Rhodes stuff because that was the really big storyline over the last few days. For everybody else who's been listening to this, we appreciate it. If you're downloading this and subscribing to it on your favorite podcast platform, fantastic. We appreciate that too. If you can, go on Apple Podcasts and leave us a 5-star review. That would be really helpful. Check out TheSportster.com for all the news and articles that we're talking about and writing about on these podcasts. For Norman and myself, this has been another edition of The Sportster Show, and we'll talk to you guys next time. Enjoy Raw tonight.